Hi, and welcome back to Waffle House. I've wanted to make this video for a long time, and I was kind of debating making it on the main channel. I figured maybe it's just better suited for this channel because I just want to speak my mind, and I don't really know how long it's going to take me to get through all of it. Um, like, start of the year, Kim and I wish Kim was here, but I feel really bad asking her. She's really grown to not like being on camera. And I don't like asking her to be on camera as much as possible. But at the start of the year, Kim and I made a video about our anxiety and how bad it had got, and that we were going to take some time to figure ourselves out and work on ourselves. And we have, and we've done it, and we're still doing it. And I wanted to do like a video diary catch up to where, at least where I am now. I'll let Kim speak for herself when she's ready. But I think we've both come a long way, and we're both doing a lot better. And I've learned a lot about myself and a lot about anxiety and how to deal with it. Recently on Twitter, I got into a small dialogue about how I'd found a lot of things that had helped, and I think it started because Kim and I went to a gig about a month or two ago with like hundreds of people there, and we made it through. I mean, I made it through. And someone on Twitter was like, "Man, if you could tell me anything that would help," and I sat there on my phone after the gym recording like 20 minutes of video for this guy. And if you're watching this, I'm sorry I never uploaded it. I was like, Twitter only lets me upload a minute at a time. So I just want to get everything out here before I start forgetting a lot of the things I've been doing too. Because honestly, over the last year, and believe it or not, Kim and I moved almost a year ago in June. Over the last year dealing with this, I have thrown almost everything at it. It feels like everything at it. Some things have really worked. Some things I wouldn't say didn't not work, just weren't as effective. So I left them alone. So yeah, I guess I want to just go over everything that I can remember. I wish I had done like a diary along the way or a journal, but we're just gonna go off memory here. And I'm gonna try and keep this as short as possible, but it might end up being a long video. And I apologize. I can't imagine there's gonna be too much editing on this one. All right. So long story short, to catch you up on what happened, and you can go and watch the video if you want a longer version. We moved here to PA. It was an extremely stressful thing. I've spent many weeks in therapy trying to figure out why it affected me so heavily, but I had a massive mental breakdown on the way here. I had to pull over on the side of the road, and I just felt like I was dying. There's no other word to... In fact, it felt like I had died. I had convinced myself that I was dead. And for weeks after that, I was just crying and not wanting to leave bed because nothing felt real anymore. And I was convinced that I had died. I kept asking Kim, I made her promise me, am I alive? Like it was hell. And from there, I spent, even when I started to come to grips a bit and accept my reality, I still spent months dealing with derealization, which is something I've never experienced before and I've learned a lot about, where essentially I just felt like nothing was real. Even on days where I was doing much better or days where I wasn't having too much anxiety, I would still feel like things weren't real. I started getting out of the house more by going for walks, and I would physically touch the trees just to make sure they were there, to feel something. And I never really knew what I was looking for because it never really helped all that much, but maybe it did help ground me a little bit. The real killer, though, was just the anxiety that I was feeling. It was a lot of not wanting to leave the house and When I did, I felt like I needed to run screaming home because I was in danger of some kind. And that's when I did a lot of researching into anxiety and what my brain was experiencing. I actually started reading books, which is very unlike me. And I read this one called Panic Free, which it's interesting. The method of the book, it tries to teach you a way of dealing with anxiety. And the funny thing is, that way of dealing with it didn't really help me or stick with me that much. But the explanation as to what my brain was doing, or the lead up to the book did, teaching you about your brain and how it works in states of anxiety, that helped me a ton. Just learning about my brain and understanding that what I'm going through is this weird chemical process, this weird psychological breakdown of events, and figuring out what exactly was happening to me when I felt anxiety helped me rationalize it more when it was happening. I recommend you read the book for the full breakdown that I can't summarize in 20 seconds, but essentially, a big thing I was fearing when I would go out is that I was going to pass out. A big fear of mine was that I would just get so anxious, my breathing would get out of control, I would hyperventilate, I would lose oxygen to my brain, I would pass out. It's happened once before, and I just kept thinking it would happen again, even though it hasn't happened in a couple of years now. And it certainly hasn't happened. Even when I had the big mental breakdown on the way here, that was terrifying. I still didn't pass out. But for some reason, I just had this big fear that I would pass out in the middle of somewhere scary. It's a horrifying feeling coming to. I'm terrified of it, you know, that realization of, oh, I'm waking up. I must have passed out. And that dizzy feeling and the sounds and just the sounds you hear when you start coming to and everyone gathered around you. It's I'm getting sweaty just thinking about it. And it's taken me a long time to even get to the point where I could talk about it freely like this without feeling like I was getting lightheaded. Talking about my anxiety in general is something that took a long time to get to the point where I could do. But I started to learn about my brain and how it was reacting to things. So again, I'm not a psychologist and I'm just going by a book I read, but there's a part of your brain called the amygdala, and essentially it reacts to change. It can actually inform you if you're in danger or if that's bad change or good change, but it just reacts to change. So leaving the house is change, you know, driving a car you haven't driven before is change. And your amygdala is just telling you that this is different. Then your critical thinking is supposed to take over and let you know whether or not it's safe, or if you're safe, or if it's good change, bad change. And I had rewired my brain and my critical thinking to just being scared of everything. So my amygdala would say, hey, you're sitting in a restaurant. Hey, you're out in public. And my critical thinking would go, oh, you might pass out. Here's all the ways that this could go really bad and you'll get really anxious and you might run out of breath. But from there, you go through some more stages too, or at least, yeah, you do. And I did. You start to fall down the ladder of anxiety. So one of the first steps is just mobilization, where you feel like you want to run away. And that's very true. I feel like I wanted to run away so bad, my legs were like shaking like crazy because they wanted to move and they wanted to get out of the situation. But the thing that really helped me is that's actually a step above demobilization, which is the passing out. And learning that this was actually a thing too, and that I wasn't, you know, crazy. And this is just the stages a brain can go through as it starts shutting down in a heightened state of anxiety. Knowing that demobilization, passing out, was the stage after mobilization, wanting to run away, it kind of gave me a safety net. I then realized, oh, I can run away. Worst case scenario, I can leave. And I won't get to that point. It'll suck. It hurts. I feel silly. Makes me want to cry. But at least I know I'm not going to get to that point as long as I react at this point when it gets that bad. When the anxiety starts bubbling over into a point where I feel like I just need to leave and I can't take it anymore. Weirdly, it helped just reading that and learning about that. It also went into interesting comparisons to like primitive animals that aren't capable of critical thinking, and a lot of things made a lot of sense when they did that. Like a lizard, for example, when it's alerted to change, like you stepping near it or around it, its critical thinking gets anxious and scared and wants to run away to safety. So it flees, it runs. That's an example of mobilization in the animal world. It's their brains aren't smart enough to know, oh, this guy doesn't want to step on me. He probably won't step on me. It's just better to leave. And then immobilization is like an animal that plays dead or, you know, it passes out on its back because it gets so scared. It's so stupid. And that was me. I was being so stupid. Not really. There's nothing dumb about it. But it's nice putting it in a context like that, because then every time I went anywhere where I felt really anxious, and the reason why I'm making this video and talking all this through is because I think I have managed to develop some ways that help with anxiety when you go out. And if any of these techniques help you, that would make me so overjoyed. That, you know, it was the same thing with my depression. And when I made videos called This Is Me, or videos in general, where I would say, if everything I went through had a purpose, if everything I went through can at least reach one person, I can share my experiences and can help them, then I consider it worth it. I don't know why I'm making this video right now, but yeah, that's what helped me, is just knowing the steps. So next time you go out, if you have a similar fear of like, I just think I'm going to get so out of breath or pass out or so anxious, just know that you go through waves first. You go through stages. And when I realized that, I started to push how long I could stay in places, you know? I started to push how long I could hang out in the wanting to run away. And I would leave it till the very last second before I just left. If it was dinner or a Marshall's with Kim, I would leave it till the very last second, and then I would leave and take a breath, and maybe sometimes even come back in. But then I would be like, oh, I lasted 10 minutes that time. Oh, I lasted 15 minutes that time. And I started to learn that starting to feel anxious doesn't mean I'm instantly going to pass out, which was, I had no idea what was happening to me. I had no idea what the 0 to 100 time was. And I remember when I first moved here and I first started dealing with all of this, and I was driving with Kim, if I was driving and I felt even a little bit of anxiety building up, that was it. I would pull over, Kim, you're driving, I'm done. It took me a long time of practice and getting out there and not giving up, and exposure therapy and learning how long I can sit in my anxiety to realize I can sit in anxiety and drive for a long time. You know, and it now for a long time, then, you know, 10 minutes, half an hour. I knew I was going to forget something in this video, and I did. I want to pause here real quickly and mention that through all of this, through figuring out how long I could stay in these situations, breathing was absolutely key. I was told from the start to concentrate on breathing and focus on your breathing, and it didn't help me at first at all. In fact, I was told a lot of things like wear a rubber band on your wrist and start flicking it, find something to fidget with, anything to distract your brain. But to me, if I realized I was flicking a rubber band or breathing in public, that meant I had got to the point where I was feeling anxious, and I would overthink that. I would realize I was trying to cope and deal with something I was battling, and suddenly I would spiral, and it would just make it worse. So initially, I really had to come to grips with leaning in to working on these techniques and actually using them and being okay with using them. But the breathing thing I had a hard time with until I discovered box breathing. And I really wish I wasn't freeze framed while telling you guys this, but box breathing has given me a whole new tool to use when I feel anxious. You can look this up. You can even find apps to download to help you practice it. But it's essentially, you hold your breath, you exhale completely, get everything out, hold your breath for 4 seconds, then inhale, counting to 4 slowly. These are always 4 slow counts. Then hold your breath at the top for 4 count. Then exhale for 4 count again, and rinse and repeat. Again, look it up. Make sure you're doing it right. Get an app that'll time you. You can just download a box breathing app. Apparently, this is something that people in the military use as they're going to war. It just like calms you down and helps you find a focus. A reason why it helped me so much is no matter how anxious I was feeling, I knew I couldn't possibly pass out if I was controlling my own breathing. The reason why that happens is I don't focus on breathing, I get short of breath. So as long as I had a steady breath rhythm, I knew I was going to be okay. But something about that box breathing, it's like a meditation therapy esque feeling that it gets out of you. And it really, really helps calm me down. So in those situations I'm talking about, where I'm making it through going to gigs and driving and sitting in grocery stores, it's almost always with my box breathing. So that's important to note. The drive up to New York to do the podcast with Bob and everyone was a real help, a test and barometer, because I remember the first time we did it, I made it just across the Jersey Bridge before I was like, Kim, I feel like a pit in my heart and my stomach. I can't continue. And she took over for a while, drove until Staten Island, and then I took over and I went the rest of the way. The next time we went, I went almost half the way before Kim had to take over. The next time we went, Kim didn't take over. I felt like hell the whole time. I was a mess, but I made it. And slowly but surely, now we're at the point where I'm doing the whole drive and I'm not really thinking about it. And there's good days and there's bad days, but it was definitely that exposure therapy and learning how long I could sit in my anxiety. That was the main key for me, was exposure therapy and learning about my brain and learning how long I could deal with certain situations, way past where I thought I could deal with them. But there was more around that. I tried everything, like I said. I did meditation. I was doing meditation every morning for 15, 20 minutes with incense. And initially, that helped a ton. Now I'm at the point where I'm a big believer in meditation, but I haven't been doing it. I can't even pretend I've been doing it the last few months. But I've been doing better, and that's why. I'm managing to find my own ground. I feel like things are real again. Whereas when I was dealing with derealization, it really helped to breathe and be with my own thoughts. And that was scary at first. Kim can't meditate. She says it scares her because she doesn't like being alone with her own thoughts. But it sucked at first, you know? I didn't know what to think about. You're not supposed to really think of anything, but you get scared of your own thoughts, but also just scared to breathe, and you kind of sit there rocking back and forth and nothing's really happening. And make sure you put music on. I go to Spotify and I did a meditation playlist, and that helped a lot. You get into a weird Zen state when you listen to that music too, because you kind of just listen for the bells or the little and you just focus on and then suddenly out of nowhere you realize, oh, there's birds in this music, and I haven't noticed that until now. They're way deep in the song. They're in the layers of the music. And then you just start to try and focus on the birds and the smell of the incense. It can really, really calm you and ground you. And then you kind of breathe when you're done and you get on with your day. And it helps. It helps a lot when you're having bad days. What else did I try? I'm wearing stress beads. I never thought I'd be that guy. I'm telling you, everything. We went to an aromatherapy store to get the incense, and she had stress beads, and I asked her what the best ones were for anxiety. We even got incense that was good for anxiety. You can get stress relief anxiety. You can get, whatever. Beads. Lavender. That's what I was thinking of. Lavender. Lavender is good for stress. So you can go to an aromatherapist too and ask them. I tried CBD. I'm not against drugs. I just don't want to do them. That's a personal choice for me. I've been that way since I was a kid. I've never smoked a cigarette. I don't drink alcohol. I don't even like taking Advil for headaches. I'm weird. Never really needed to take medicine or medication really either, which is also developed into a fear of medication, which I'm very aware I have. In all of this, antihistamines were recommended as a way of calming anxiety, and I do think they work, actually. Just regular Zyrtec, weirdly. But even, I'd never taken one before, because I don't have allergies, really. And the first time I took one, I almost had an anxiety attack because I was taking Zyrtec. So I'm very aware. I have definitely some bad ideals around drugs and medication. But yeah, I never wanted to go. I tell you, between you guys and me, came very close to cannabis. I don't know what word to use that won't get flagged by YouTube. I even had a buddy of mine grab me something, which he did, and I haven't got it. I haven't seen him. It was like months ago. When I was getting real desperate, I was almost going to try that. But we tried CBD, and honestly, it made us more anxious, which we heard was a thing. A lot of people have said CBD can sometimes make it worse. I tried little bits. I tried more than little bits, and it never really seemed to help. And, you know, I skipped one part of this story because, not intentionally, but because there's so much to tell. But I will say that no matter how many things I tried, and there was a lot more that I probably have forgotten or I'll remember later and wish I had talked about. No matter how many things I tried and how many times I felt like I was getting better and I was making progress, and I really was, it did get to a point several months ago where it was coming all crashing down. I don't know why. I can't really remember what happened, but for about a week, I couldn't get settled at home. You know, all of this anxiety has been out of the house. It's been trying to leave the house and do things. In-house, I've been fine. But there was about a week, several months ago now, where it started happening at home. And I think it was just like a one-time thing that I was then like, oh God, please don't make this a thing at home. For the love of God, don't make this a thing at home. This is my one place. And it terrified me. This was my safe place. It terrified me. And because of that, I manifested it, I think. And I was getting more and more anxious at home. I couldn't relax. I couldn't watch TV. I couldn't work. I couldn't lie in bed. Kim went out and bought me a weighted blanket, which does help, but wasn't helping too much. We're trying everything to calm me down. And, you know, I've heard stories in the past. This is going to sound like a very Richie Rich thing. The house, we've been here a year, and we realized we're doing a really bad job at cleaning it. So I hired cleaners for today, and they are upstairs. I didn't think they would make this much noise. I don't know if you can hear it in this video. I really hope you can. But it sounds like they are grinding away at the floorboards, which is awesome. What was I saying? God damn it. I was on such a tangent. Oh yeah, I couldn't get comfortable at home. No matter what I tried to do, I just wasn't settling down. Just like them. They're really doing my head in right now. I'm trying to continue, and they're right above me, and they are so loud. And I bet this thing's doing a great job at noise canceling them out, and I just look insane. Anyway, my anxiety got so bad. Oh yeah, and I've heard a lot of people talk about how, oh, I thought I was having a heart attack when I had anxiety. So I went to hospital, and they were like, oh, you're just anxious. Get out of here, you little scamp. Not really how it goes. But I was like, I know that's a thing. I'm not going to let that get to me. That's never going to get to me. Like, I know I'm not going to get to the point where I get so anxious I think I'm having a heart attack, because I know I have anxiety. I've been dealing with this whole time. I'm in therapy. Did I mention that? That's another huge one. I don't want to gloss over that. I'm in actual therapy every Tuesday, and that has helped so much, and we can talk about that later. But I know I'm dealing with this anxiety. I'm not going to feel like I'm having a heart attack. But after the week of being anxious nonstop and feeling my heart rate nonstop, I started to get this idea in my head. I was like, okay, I know that I'm anxious and I might get that way, but what is the damage of sitting in this for a week? Will I actually give myself a heart attack? And then I started thinking, like, you know, what if I actually have one? I don't feel like I'm having one, but what if I sit in this for too long and then I give myself one? And I really started to get freaked out. So before it got too bad, and I mean, like, I was having attacks, but I wasn't like ready for the ER. I was like, before I get ready for the ER, before it gets to that point, I'm just going to urgent care. I'm at my wit's end. You know, I've tried everything at this point, and my plan was to go to urgent care and get anti-anxiety medication, because I was I was at the end of my rope. I had tried everything up until that point. Nothing felt like it was ultimately working. It felt like I was having good days, bad days, but ultimately I wasn't beating this thing. I wasn't getting anywhere. And now I'm at home feeling like I'm going to have a heart attack. So we went to urgent care, and they actually turfed us next door to our actual primary care physician, which we didn't think she was in, which is why we didn't go. And thank God we saw her, because she was awesome. I remember having to wait for her to see her for like an hour, because she fit us in, but like didn't really have time. And I was sat in the room having an anxiety attack for an hour, and my God, that was horrendous. But she came in, I was a mess, and I told her the whole story. And I said, look, I'm terrified of medication, but I'm at my wit's end. And she looked at me and she was like, okay, I'm gonna prescribe you the medication you came for. And she did. She prescribed me Prozac. But she said, I want you to try this too. And she prescribed me something called propranolol. And she was like, this was primarily initially used as a heart medication to lower blood pressure, but it's seen some really positive results in bringing down anxiety, because it blocks a lot of the physical symptoms of anxiety. It lowers your blood pressure, it lowers your heart rate, which in turn gets rid of the sweaty hands. It actually can give you cold hands sometimes, but it gets rid of the sweaty hands. It gets rid of a lot of the body shaking, feeling like you're gonna die. It calms that down, which in turn makes you feel like you're getting better, makes you feel like the anxiety is calming down, and then you calm down. And thank God she prescribed that. You know, as I sit here, I don't know when my journey ends. I'm not saying I'm not ever going to try Prozac, or I'm not ever going to try any other medication, because there's only so long I'm willing to deal with living like this. But it was almost an instant cure. It was almost a cure. You know, I'm still working on it. I'm still trying to get somewhere with this, and I definitely am still scared to try a lot of things. I haven't wanted to take the propranolol on a plane yet. I'm still terrified to try it, because I'm terrified of flying in general, and I don't think this blood pressure medication can fight that level of fear. But she gave it to me, and I took him. She'd take him 3 times a day, keep your blood pressure down. And a day in, I was calm again at home. And I was excited. I was like, am I onto something here? So the next day, I went back to that grocery store that I went to initially. I told you guys the story, the video of me crying in the car. It was that grocery store. I hadn't been back there since. I don't know why I'm about to cry. But I was excited. I was like, man, I might actually have something here. And I went shopping, man. I was on my own too. Kim went out with her mom, and I was like, I'm just going to go. And I went, and I bought Kim a couple gifts. I bought her mom a couple gifts. I bought something for the boys and Darla. And at that point, it had been like 6 months, like 5 months, 6 months since I had been anywhere on my own, been back to that store that I was terrified of, been in a grocery store, period. I hadn't been back to a grocery store before. And I just did it. And I felt so good. I went somewhere else. I went and got yogurt, frozen yogurt. So stupid. I just went everywhere that day. I went and got coffee. And it's been a life changer. That medication was a life changer. I took it for about a month straight. I took it every day. You know, I went to that gig with Kim and sat there. This was a while after that. It still took, I want to stress, it's not a cure-all instant miracle pill. I had to work at it. I had to work at it still, but it felt like I had a bulletproof vest on. In my mind, I went from amygdala, reacting, critical thinking, mobilization, immobilization. It went from amygdala, reacting, Propranolol, mobilization, immobilization. It gave me armor. It gave me an extra level. That's the way it felt in my head, because I literally could feel, and it was the weirdest feeling to begin with. I could feel the anxiety starting. I could feel it. And it's like, I almost felt like it was being trapped inside. Like it couldn't physically present. I was anxious, but like my hands weren't getting sweaty. I didn't feel like running away immediately. My heart rate wasn't racing. It was just like, I felt like I had trained myself to be anxious in these situations. I had trained my brain to feel anxious, to react anxiously, to be anxious. And I could feel myself trying to be anxious, telling myself all the same things I would always tell myself. And some of these are very dark, but what if you pass out? What if someone comes in here with a gun right now? What if you had to defend yourself? What if, like, it's just all these things you flood your head with. That's like at a store, for example. When I'm driving, it's, what if you crash? What if you this and that, you know? If you're on a bridge, you start having bad thoughts about being on a bridge, you know? And I trained myself in all these situations, and now all of a sudden I had this propranolol just keeping it all inside. And it felt like a pit initially, but it wasn't getting let out. And it was a scary feeling still, because I was like not used to it. But eventually I got used to it. And eventually the more I got used to it, the more I didn't fear it, and the more it just didn't happen. I just felt kind of protected in those moments. Hi, me again. There was another important bit here, very important, where I learned through the propranolol that lowering blood pressure or keeping it low was a good key in keeping anxiety in check. Obviously, that's what this medication did. So even around that, I obviously took a lot of steps to not raise my blood pressure. So I immediately cut out all caffeine, and that helped a lot. I switched to decaf coffee. I don't drink regular coffee. I was even really careful around tea or soda. I stopped drinking soda, anything with caffeine. And in fact, with the tea, you can even get in health food stores or some even supermarkets, you can get blood pressure tea. So every day, like at night, sometimes in the morning, I would wake up and drink a hot blood pressure tea as well. It's kind of an interesting little hack I learned through how propranolol works. It literally just lowers blood pressure. So anything else you can do to keep it low on top of that obviously helps. And yeah, I still had to work at it. I mean, I was on propranolol still trying to go for walks with Darla and feeling like I was having anxiety attacks. You know, it didn't immediately jump to, I went to a gig, but eventually we did. And I got to tell you, I sat down at that gig and they started playing and I was ready to run. And I was like, make it through a song, make it through 2 songs. Then we got to 3 songs, 4 songs. I got to halfway and I was like, I'm making it the whole way. And, you know, I will say doing big things like that too puts everything else into perspective. After going to that gig, leading up to it, I was still kind of anxious in grocery stores. But leading up to that gig and then doing it afterwards, I was like, what's a grocery store? I went to a gig. And then again, it sets a new bar. Kim and I going to PAX was huge. I'm surprised we even made it through that. Thousands of people, tens of thousands of people. We came back from that, like a 4-day weekend of all of that. And again, I remember Kim and I went to a grocery store the next day and Kim asked me how I was feeling. And I was like, this is nothing now. This feels like nothing now. And there are still days where I go and I'm a little anxious for no reason, but I know I can do it now. I know I have all these barometers for what I can do. Will I feel anxious during it? Maybe. But I can do it. And learning what I can do is what has really helped. And I also want to say that I only took that propranolol for about that first month. And then I just decided I wanted to see what I could do without it. See if I learned anything, if I'd retrained my brain. And I've barely taken it since. I take it when needed. I have it with me all the time. I haven't taken it in a couple of months. It's with me all the time. And it's still a security blanket. And it's not the best to have that security blanket. I would like to eventually not even need to have it near me. But like, if I'm going somewhere and I start to feel anxious, I'm like, it's in the car. I could go take it, but I'll see how long I can last. If it wasn't there, I would probably feel a lot more worried. So it is still, in a way, giving me a layer of security, but I'm not even taking it. So I still consider that a win. Oh, I'm scattering the story a little bit here, but even when I stopped taking that propranolol, I still had a long way to go. Something that has helped me so incredibly much recently was, I want to say pretty much 2 months ago now, almost on the dot, I think, I signed up for a gym. I was putting that off for a long time. I tried going to LA Fitness when I first started dealing with anxiety, and I wanted to try and nip it in the bud when I moved here, and it was rough. I went one time and never wanted to go back, and I just sort of relied on working out at home. But that doesn't help. And a couple months ago, I really put my foot down with, okay, you're doing a lot better, but you need something daily. Something I told myself I was going to do a long time ago. And again, I wish I had written everything down because I'm so scatterbrained. And if you're taking notes, you're going to have to mess things up, add things here and add things there. But I told myself months ago now that I was going to leave the house every day. I know when it started. It started when I took the break. When I took the break from YouTube, I was like, okay, I'm taking this break. But part of the stipulation of taking this break is I have to leave the house at least once every day. That can be for 6 hours. That can be for 10 minutes. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how bad I'm feeling, how bad the day is, what's going on that day. You have to leave the house at least once. And I did. That entire month, I left the house, whether it was to go somewhere with Kim, to explore a town, to go to the cinema. Actually, going to the movies took a long time to weirdly build up to. And I've only done it twice. I was doing the leaving the house thing every day, and I was nailing it. But I felt like I needed something more routine. A lot of the leaving the house every day was always different and random and fun, but there was no routine. And it was almost like, okay, today we're going to a coffee shop, but I'm a little nervous because I haven't been there before. Or today we're going to go to the mall. I'm a little nervous because we haven't done the mall before, you know? I wanted something that I could go to every day, it's the same place every day, and that I got used to going there, you know? And then it became a comfortable place outside the home. And I think that was a really smart idea. I mean, if you don't like working out, maybe a coffee shop you go to every day and you work out for half an hour on your laptop or something, or find something equivalent for you. But, I started going to the gym every day. Monday to Friday, actually. I didn't want to go every day to the gym. Monday to Friday, I would go to the gym, and I woke up, I'd get ready, I'd go. The first day, I was terrified. I was anxious the whole time. I remember, I think I walked on the treadmill for most of it, and I was just too afraid to lift anything, really, or lift too heavy because I didn't want to get out of breath. That feeling of being out of breath was not something I wanted to welcome. The second day, I remember I felt a little better on the treadmill, and I still didn't lift that heavy, but I got some weights in. The third day, the treadmill was almost okay, and I did my workout, and it's repetition and repetition, and, there's this one stairwell in the gym where it's at the very back of the gym. I had this thing for a long time about being at the very back of anywhere that I was because it's the furthest place from an exit. And I'm now realizing I haven't thought about that in a while, which is nice. But there was a staircase, and I kind of always judged how anxious I was that day by how anxious I was going up the staircase at the back of the gym. And now I go to the gym, and I'm fine. It's a happy place for me now, It's a 10-minute drive there, 10-minute drive back. I'm used to the drive. I'm used to being in the gym, and it's given me somewhere outside of the house I feel comfortable in, and it's removed that element of only feeling safe at home. Now I feel safe somewhere else, and it's at the gym. It's somewhere else. So it's not just at home, which is huge, I think. I think that's massive, really. And if you can instill something like that in yourself, whether it's a friend's house to begin with, or a store, or a coffee shop, or a cafe, or anything, I think that's huge. To add a safe place somewhere else, I think that's huge. And it's really helped me. And also, a lot of gym bros would tell you that physical health and going to the gym is a cure-all for mental health. And it's not. It's really not. But it does actually help. getting physically fit, working out, being active, getting sun, vitamin D, leaving the house, doing all of that helps mental health, improves mental health so much. I can't stress it enough. It helps so much. And I believe for some people it can be a cure-all, you know. Um I would argue those people might not be dealing with the most extreme anxiety and depression, and maybe just like a level that the gym can just ease it off. But anything helps. I'll take anything that helps, and working out and staying fit and being active and eating healthy helps so much. So combining that with adding a safe space is crazy. I've been talking a long time, and I know I'm adding a lot to your plate of things to do, but I'm now remembering, and I should have written all this down. I'm glad I'm at least doing this. Something else that really helped, and I read this in the book too, it was stop planning safe routes, because there are no safe routes. Everything is safe. You're safe. You're okay. What I mean by that is, like, for example, when I started feeling the anxiety while driving, what I would do is I would intentionally not drive close to 5 p.m. or busy times. And no matter when I was driving, I would take back streets. I was terrified of the highway. I was terrified of main roads. I would want back streets. I would want easy exits. Something I got a really bad habit of, and I'm still shaking the habit now, even when I don't feel like actually needing to do it, is checking my peripheries for safe places to sit, lie down, leave, escape, doors. If I'm going on a walk, I'll make sure there's somewhere to lie down on a grass patch. So if it looks like if I have to pass out, it just looks like I'm taking a break, and that way no one's going to disturb me. That's a weird thing I think about all the time, or I used to, gotten better. When I'm driving, I would always want to see an exit or a street, or at least a driveway. I would take pulling into someone's driveway, which I've done before, if I'm feeling really anxious, to take a second and get off the street, as long as there's an exit, So I'd want to avoid highways. I'd want to avoid any busy streets or anywhere I might get stuck in traffic. But what that is doing, or what that did, was instill fear in me, or it would teach me that there were things to fear. It would teach me there were things to be scared of. So I would take my little safe route, but I'd be so paranoid and terrified of the hard, scary route. When really driving is driving. Driving is driving. If you're on a highway, if you're on a side street, if I want to get dark about it, an accident can happen anywhere. And if I want to be positive about it, I'm as safe here as I am there. Nothing's going to happen. I've been driving my whole life. There's no reason to fear it. And when you start fearing it, that's what spikes your anxiety levels. Every time you are out or you're doing anything and you have that intrusive thought of, what if this happens? Or what if that happens? What if this bridge collapses while I'm driving on it? That spikes your anxiety level 1 or 2. It brings you up 1 or 2. It injects you with, I forgot what the word is, the opposite of whatever like serotonin is. It like injects you with it. And the more you add, the more things you think about, and the more things you add on top of that, the more it bubbles up till you hit that 5, 6, 7 on the anxiety scale. And we all know once you hit 6 or 7, there's almost no calming down. Which actually I've learned is not true. It's not. When you hit 6 or 7, you get super anxious and you might even bubble over into full panic attack. But you can calm down and you can reset and you can keep going even when that happens, which is another skill I've been trying to master. But fortunately, I'm not getting up into that point as much as I was. But I always thought if I ever got to that point, I'd have to go home and reset and be done for a week. But I've learned that you can have a full-blown anxiety attack and be fine 10 minutes later. Not always. Sometimes it does take a night. But my point is, don't be scared of a hard route, or tell yourself there's a hard, scary way, because you're just training your own brain that there are scary ways. And then if you ever end up accidentally on a main road or accidentally on a highway, you're going to have an anxiety attack. It's all safe. Face your fears. I say face your fears to you right now. And I know it might sound like a corny thing to say, but it is a mantra that I have been screaming at myself for a long time now. And it's been helping me. It's just facing my fears head on. One of the first times I did it successfully is Kim and I went to the city here, Philly City, and we wanted to go to round one. And we walked in the round one building and we saw it was 3 escalators high. It was 3 floors high. I went up the first one, didn't love it. Went up the second one, was having anxiety. I'm now at this point very far away from my car. And to get back to my car, I have to wait through 2 sets of escalators and like get out of this mall. And I'm staring at the third one and I'm walking up to it and I pivoted. I walked away. I turned around. And Kim is so used to this by now. She thought we were just heading back. I turned around and I told myself, face your fears. And I walked back around and I almost sprinted up the escalator. I stomped up the escalator. And we went to the arcade. And I had a rough time, but I went and I did it. And you know, it sucked actually. I didn't have fun. But I did it. And I taught myself that I could do it. And then a couple months later, Kim, myself, Bob, Hannah and Scoot, we all went to an arcade and I had fun because I knew I could last. I knew I would be okay. I've done it before. So this time I was able to enjoy it. And that's been a big part of this is facing my fears and making milestones. And I might be terrified grocery shopping the first 10 times that I tried doing it, but I kept going back and it kept getting easier and easier and easier until now I don't even think about it. So don't plan safe routes. That's all safe. You're okay. And face your fears. And remember, while you're out there and you're making progress, another thing that really helped me, a weird mantra, was I didn't come this far to only come this far. I didn't make all that progress to only make all that progress. And I mean that right now too. And I want to stress, I am not in any way out of the woodshed. Am I still recording? Yes, good. I've been recording for how long? That's not too bad. Felt like I've been talking for an hour and a half. I am not in any way cured. I'm not in any way through this, but I am very positively thinking about how much progress I have made and how far I have come and what I'm capable of now. I went from not being able to drive, not being able to step foot in a restaurant or a grocery store, not being able to even bear the thought of doing anything other than staying at home, to I live my day-to-day now. Fine. I can do anything around here now. I can go to the store. I can go get some food. I can pick something up for Kim on my own. I can go to the gym. I can do anything I damn well want right now. And yeah, sometimes I get anxious and sometimes I overthink it. And sometimes I have to deal with anxiety in places where I never dealt with them before. But I know that I'm going to be okay. And worst case scenario, I have some propranolol that I could pop if I need it, but I haven't done that in so long. I actually also see a psychologist once a month, and I'm supposed to talk to her in 2 days. And every time I talk to her, she's like, "You need more propranolol?" And every time I go, "I haven't taken any, so no, I still have some." Very proud of that. We also did PAX, and I didn't take any through PAX too, and I was very, very proud of that, you know. And there's no shame in needing it. This is why I still have it. God knows I need to at least know that I have it. But ultimately, my goal is to get through this and get better. I'm trying to get better. And I think medication and all of that is something that you should use to get better if you need it. But the ultimate goal is to actually get better, which isn't the case for everyone. You know, I'm dealing with what I consider to be extreme anxiety. But I think what has really helped me the most is that I had a big breakdown on the way here, and now I deal with anxiety. But I can very recently remember a time where I didn't have it. So I'm just trying to get back there, and I know what that feels like. So when I have a good day, I feel normal again. Not that I'm not normal or I wasn't normal before, but it feels like the old me again, and it's such a good indication I'm on the right foot. I'm making progress. Whereas someone like Kim, and maybe you watching this, has had anxiety her whole life. So I don't think she knows what a good day is or a bad day is sometimes. And I don't know if she necessarily knows what it looks like or what it feels like to not have anxiety for extended periods of time. So I imagine it's way harder to chase that goal and that dream of not feeling like it. But I hope to those people, some of what I've said can still help. But I guess a lot of my advice or a lot of things that worked for me, I'm hoping that it helps people that deal with something later in life, or, you know, maybe they have a bit of a breakdown. And I feel like I should end this video because I'm kind of rambling. But I guess the last thing I'll say is, as far as why, in all this therapy I've had, and all this deep reflection and meditation and everything I've learned about myself, why I think I had that breakdown is just because I had so much to lose this time. I'd moved states and countries and places so many times, but I always did it on my own, just me. And I only had myself to blame if something went wrong. I only had myself that was going to get hurt if something went wrong. And I also, every other time I've done this, I didn't have sort of like this whole social media empire that I had built, whatever you want to call it. You know, I was broke every other time I moved. This time we had a house. We had bought a house in Texas. We had a family now. I had a wife. I wanted to make sure she was safe and okay, and we were doing the right thing. I had these terrifying thoughts of like, I'm changing the trajectory of our lives right now. What if we move and something bad happens? I love our family so much. I would stay in Texas forever if I knew that we would be safe there if we weren't going to be safe here, like, and I had all of those thoughts, and I was so terrified that we were doing the wrong thing because I couldn't predict the future. And, it wasn't just me. It was Kim and her mom and our cats. And, it's so many other lives were on the line this time. And I crumbled under that pressure like a twisted pretzel. I don't know. I crumbled big time. I couldn't take the pressure. I'd never experienced that level of pressure before. We did everything so quick without thinking about it. We sold that house and bought a new one months after we decided we wanted to move. And then all of a sudden we were moving, and I had heat stroke, and I'd packed 2 trucks on my own, and we were driving 3 days straight. And I realized the weight of what we were doing and what we had committed to, and the terrifying reality that things were going to be different no matter whether it was good or bad. I melted, and I just collapsed in on myself and had a complete mental shutdown, which escalated into anxiety and derealization and that fear of feeling like I was going to pass out every time I went into public. So if anything ever happens to you or has happened to you like that, and you remember a time where you were doing better before, I think it is all about retraining the brain and finding what works for you. The brain can be wired in many different ways, and it can be wired wrong in many different ways. I recommend that book. The last thing I'll say is something it talks about is children that are brought up in bad environments. They have their brains wired badly in those environments, and it sets them up for the rest of their life. For example, let's say you have a kid, or let's put you in the position of being the kid, like me. Let's say your parents hated noise in the house. So growing up, every time you got excited or you were having fun with your brother or your sister or your friends or whatever in the house, you got told to shut up and be quiet. Very real situation for a lot of people. It trains the kid just like it would train a puppy, just like it would train a cat, just like it would train any other animal to be quiet when they're feeling excited, when they're feeling happy, when they're having joyous moments. Be quiet, shut it down. And as you grow up, you never learn how to express happiness. That kid never learns how to share joy or be loud or have a good time. And they feel almost like they don't want to interrupt, or they don't want to bother people, or they don't want to upset anyone with being loud. So they're quiet. They become quiet people. All that stuff is trained in you when you're young. Some of it might be genetic. Some of it might be just that person developing the way they develop. No matter how much of a loving household you have, some people are just quiet people. But that's how a brain gets trained. And I know, like for Kim, she needs to learn how to retrain parts of her brain to share those exciting moments and to be happy and to laugh and to have fun. And um, for me, when I had my big breakdown, I started to train my brain and rewire my brain to be scared when I went places or scared when I was doing things. And what I have been trying so hard to do is retrain my brain to not be scared and to understand that I'm safe and that things are okay. And I have been making such good progress with that. So I think that's everything. There's no way this video was ever going to be short. I've had a year of anxiety and breakdowns and learning experiences and things I've tried, and we haven't even talked about all of the things I've tried, but definitely the things I think that stood out as they either worked or I tried them for a long time. So I didn't even get into, like, we tried every drop and gummy and chewy we could find with all these different natural remedies for stress and anxiety, and some of them worked. We had little drops that really worked, but then they didn't. We tried ashwagandha. I tried GABA. Remember one time I bought GABA to try, and I bought this really high dosage. It was like 1,000 milligrams, and I didn't realize you could actually have so much GABA that you make yourself anxious. And I was catching the train to see Bob, and I had a full-blown anxiety attack on the train. I'm talking like I thought I was going to throw up, pass out. We were in between stops, and I was just like gone, man. And as soon as the train opened its doors, I ran out of the train station and had to, I don't even know how I got home. That whole day was a blur. I was halfway to New York. But later on when we were home, we looked at the GABA and we were like, that's the first time I tried taking it. I took like 1,000 milligrams. So tried everything. But yeah, weirdly, nothing worked as well as a propranolol. It was definitely I'm hoping a life changer. Final thing. I was putting off making this video because I always felt like I'm going to make it and then I'm going to have a bad week and I'm going to be like, why am I trying to help people? I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a doctor. I'm just sharing my experience. I might get worse next week. The anxiety might bubble over, you know? I might go backwards. I'm always prepared for that. And, you know, and that's a good thing to be prepared for that, to know that I might not be out of it yet. And if it happens, I'll fight back, and that's okay. I don't want to convince myself it's not going to happen and then have it happen and be like, oh, everything was for nothing. Might have a bad week, might have a bad month, might get worse, worser than it ever was. I don't think that'll happen, but I wanted to share what I've learned and my story and my progress so far. Mostly because I feel bad I didn't journal any of it. So hopefully some of this will be a nice time capsule too for me to look back and see what I was trying or what I was doing at this point in my life. I love you all and I appreciate you all so much. And if you listened or watched this whole video, I hope you got something out of it. I'm going to go see Kim and my cats and my doggy now. I love you. See you next week as always.